Good morning and welcome back to Coffee with Craig. This is where we talk about all things Second Amendment, all things firearms, policy, culture, advocacy, you name it. We're talking about it right here on Coffee with Craig. Please remember to like and share this program so that your friends can join in the conversation. Remember, if you want to get the alerts when these things go live, especially on Facebook, you have to make sure that you've clicked the notification button. I get a lot of messages from you guys wondering, why are you guys still doing the show? I'm not getting the alerts. Well, you know how Facebook is. They've decided to change how they kind of do things. So make sure you've clicked on the thing to make sure that you get notifications when we're going live on Facebook. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get the notices when we go live on there as well. And finally, if you like listening to us when you're just driving around, you can also listen to our audio podcast. This is rebroadcast as an audio podcast. You can get it on iTunes. You can get it on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Spotify. All you have to do is look for Morning Coffee with Craig, or you can just follow the link in the description of this video where it says anchor.fm, and there it'll tell you all the places that you can find Coffee with Craig. Finally, one last thing. I always pitch it every morning, and I'm going to do it again. It's fpcgear.com. All of the coolest Second Amendment advocacy t-shirts, and know that every penny goes right back into the fight for our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. So you can be 2A and look good being 2A. That's fpcgear.com. All right, let's get into today's program. You guys are all aware of the, what shall we call it, the proliferation of legislation that's taking place for these things that are called red flag laws. Now, these red flag laws, to make a long story short, are in essence, it's legislation that allows law enforcement or an individual to basically go to law enforcement or go to the courts and have your right to keep and bear arms taken away because they believe you are a danger to yourself or others. Well, there was recently an article that came out, and in this article, they were talking about something that was going on in the state of Florida, where they, in essence, have issued a large number of these. Even though it hasn't been in place too long in the state of Florida, they're talking about there's a whole lot of these that are taking place. So I'm going to run the story real quick, let you guys check out the story, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk with our good friend Mike from Arms Room Radio, because he's like right there, dead center. He's there in Florida on the ground where these things are happening. So let's go ahead and run the story, and then we'll talk with Mike afterwards.
Threats, guns, and a new law aimed at stopping violence. Nearly 5 months after Florida passed a measure that lets law enforcement take away gun rights, I-Team investigator Katie LeGrone discovers how often it's being used and why some of these cases aren't so black and white.
You've got AK-47 style here, you've got an AR-15 here.
Sergeant Jason Schmittendorf takes us inside an evidence room.
Some hunting rifles, cache of handguns here.
A sampling of surrenders under Florida's new Risk Protection Act.
We've taken in right around 200 firearms and about 30,000 rounds of ammunition.
The law, swiftly passed after the Parkland school shooting, temporarily strips gun owners of their gun rights and hardware if a judge deems them a threat to themselves or others.
Keep firearms out of the wrong people's hands.
In Pinellas County, a 5-man team is now devoted to the task. So far, they've filed 64 risk protection petitions, second only to Broward.
It is a constitutional right to keep and bear arms, and when you are asking the court to deprive somebody of that right, we need to make sure that we're making good decisions, right decisions, and the circumstances warrant it.
Statewide, we've learned risk protection cases now total over 450. Concealed license firearm holders make up just over a quarter of them.
I think we're doing this because it makes us feel safer. But what's wrong with that? It violates the Constitution.
Attorney Kendra Paris believes after 4.5 months, Florida's version of the red flag law is starting to reveal some disturbing gray.
These are individuals who are often basically exercising their First Amendment rights online. Maybe it was odious, maybe people didn't like it, but they were hit with the risk protection order because of it.
Take a UCF student whose story made headlines when police filed a risk protection order after he praised mass shooters online. Another involved a minor who had a dream of killing. Neither had guns, both hired Paris, and both won.
The people whom I've represented fought back because they cared about their future and not because they cared about owning firearms.
Harris thinks the law needs to be narrowed down to only people with proof of gun ownership or those who attempt to purchase one. And threats better defined, she says.
As it's
All right, so now you guys have kind of the what's going on. And so with that, we have Mike with Arms Room Radio. Mike, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Craig. Good morning to you. Thank you for having me back.
We always appreciate having folks from America on the show.
Well, we used to be a little more America, but we got these couple new laws in Florida over the past few months, so I think we might have dropped another letter.
All right, so I remember when this was being proposed, and you and I, we had talked a little bit about it, and I think that we're in agreement that in concept, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. We're going to, if we identify someone that we know is a risk to themselves or others, let's try and make sure that we do something to try and protect them and protect the people around them. In concept, doesn't sound like a bad idea, right?
No, it doesn't.
No,
it doesn't.
But
the problem with this is, if this law worked in concept, we'd all be safe. And the goal is here, we all want to be safe. Craig, you and I are strong Second Amendment advocates. We don't want to see guns in the hands of the wrong people. But what has happened here is we've given tools to the gun grabbing authorities to take firearms away from people that exercise their Second Amendment rights.
right, and in some of these cases, as was brought up by the attorney in the video, it's individuals who are expressing their First Amendment rights.
Right.
And they're using their First Amendment rights, and so therefore, because people don't like what they're saying, they then want to take away the right to bear arms. And that was a danger that when the law was first proposed here in California, that was a major danger that we warned about. And now here it is happening in Florida.
Yeah, it is happening in Florida, and the issues that we have in Florida. Now, you and I talked about this at length. I think we did it in person. We did it on Facebook. Oh, by the way, you did mention earlier about some of the Facebook's new rules. I am one of those victims. I'm no longer on Facebook. I've been excommunicated from the Facebook from some of their new rules and community standards. So
does that mean that I'm going to have to blur out your face?
yeah.
Change the spelling of your name.
Yeah. The Zuckerbots are going to come looking for me. Yeah, I'm thoroughly excommunicated. So with them, that's a whole other fight. It's at least with the Second Amendment, I can go to the judge or something like that. But with Zuckerberg, you're just done. You're out. It's interesting. It's interesting being off Facebook, especially when you're in person in the media. But anyway, back to what we're talking about with these firearm seizures. The points that you and I talked about, our concerns were, listen, we don't want to see, again, guns in the hands of the wrong people, and there has to be some method, some procedure to get the firearms out of those hands. When they enacted this law, at least the one here in Florida, there's no provision in it for due process. We have no due process in it, and that's the problem. Is when somebody decides, and we'll get to that in a moment, when somebody decides that you don't have the right to possess that firearm anymore. In many cases, it's because you were exercising your First Amendment right. But when they decide you can't have your firearm anymore, there's no due process to go get it back. It's just gone. It's done. It's an ex parte hearing. You're not involved in it, and they take it. And it, one time throughout the year, you're able to say you want it back, and that's about it. You can't get a firearm back once it's taken from you here. You can't go prove to yourself. There's no way to go to a judge, to go to a psychiatrist, to go to wherever it is and say, listen, I'm not psycho. It's a custody dispute. It's a divorce dispute. It's a misunderstanding. I was writing a novel and they overheard me. Whatever it happens to be, there's no place to do that. There's no due process to do that.
Well, exactly. You have been deemed.
One of the major concerns with this.
Yeah, by the time you get to court, you're now guilty till proven innocent. You now have to prove that you are not a danger to yourself or others, and no one tells you how exactly you do that. You've lost your rights, and there has been either medical or mental health professional, licensed, certified mental health professional, has deemed you to be a danger to yourself or others, yet for some reason, you've lost a fundamental right.
Yeah, absolutely correct. It's a law that maybe in spirit was thought to be something that would be effective, and all it's doing now is giving power to the liberal gun grabbers. And I'll give you the example. We're over 450 firearms that have been seized in Florida in the past couple of months since this has gone into effect. Ironically, it just happens to be the two sheriffs that are the most liberal and anti-gun in the state have seized these 450 firearms.
Well, it's interesting. In the first 2 years, only 200 have been taken in California. Now, mind you, we probably have fewer guns.
Yeah.
But
right.
About less than 200 have been taken. I mean, that's why, we're talking, 3-4 months into the program, over 400, and I think at last count it was like over 460, 400, almost 470.
Right, and the majority of these are from two sheriffs, and we talked about these sheriffs on here. One name you'll recognize. One's been in the news a little bit more recently, but the one name you'll know for sure. One is Sheriff Bob Gutierrez over there in Pinellas County. If you recall the shooting you and I talked about with the two in the parking lot over the handicap space, McLaughlin and Dirchka, I think his name was, with the two of them, and where he's since been charged with manslaughter there. Remember, Gutierrez came out with his stance about, I can't charge him because of stand your ground. I can't charge him because of stand your ground. This guy stands up all the time to talk about how the Second Amendment is wrong. He believes in the Second Amendment, but he believes he should be the only one with the guns. Him at the sheriff's office, just an adamant anti-gun guy, and that's why you saw that whole play back and forth there. Why he couldn't make the arrest for stand your ground, which is a load of crap, by the way. The sheriff can arrest whoever he wants. He's the chief law enforcement officer of the county. The state attorney would just later dismiss the charges or continue to file them. That was just a load of crap. That's all he did, was trying to get publicity. And then, of course, you recognize this name, Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel. Scott Israel and Bob Gutierrez have seized over 400 guns themselves. There's been a couple other chiefs of police, sheriff's offices that have used it, and for the most part, from everything that I've found, where it's been alarm, whether it's, and most of them have been, people that have been committed for mental health issues, and they've used it to temporarily take charge of or take custody of the firearms. Not these two guys. Gutierrez, I think the last count I saw, they were short like 100 deputies over there in that county, but he's already put together a 5-person team to go through all the injunctions that have been filed in that county to start knocking on doors and filing petitions and seizing firearms.
Well, and that's a whole other thing, is this is a way for, if law enforcement wants to get in a place and they don't have any real other probable cause, this is a way for them to be able to get in there. And the thing is what they find, they find. There's nothing that limits them to simply the firearms that they were supposed to be there in order to get. Here's the thing, and this is one of the reasons why I think we've seen, there's two reasons why I think we've seen Republicans or people who would normally be good on the Second Amendment falling for this legislation. One is that public pressure, that belief that, hey, you know what, we've been talking about the mentally ill and guns, and this will deal with, this is something, the way in which to help deal with that. Well, no, it isn't, because no mental health professionals are involved in it. But the other is this deference that many Republicans have for law enforcement. And oftentimes what winds up happening is, and by the way, there are some very good law enforcement representatives who support these laws, and that's because, and this is the biggest challenge with it is, see, their job is to provide security. And there are times when they believe, you know what, to hell with liberty, I'm going to provide security. And if I have to infringe on your liberty in order to provide you security, then I ought to be able to do that. Well, that's why it's our responsibility to stand up to them and say, no, you are not going to take away my liberty under the guise of providing me security.
Right. Now, listen, I was in law enforcement over 20 years, you know that. And the number one job is to go home at night. It's to serve and protect, but you serve and protect yourself and your family, and then you go home. You need to go home at the end of the night. And you want to give law enforcement wants all the tools. And this is the tools on the tool belt that are the physical tools, and then the mental tools, your aptitude and the ability to conduct law enforcement. The problem is, like you said, where do you draw that line? We start with these red flag laws where they could seize all these firearms. Well, that's good. Okay. Do we start to, where in the Fourth Amendment do we draw the line of security versus your freedoms. And we've heard this a number of times. From Benjamin Franklin, all the way through to present day. So, we need to draw that line. And these red flag laws are, and I'm sorry, in my honest opinion, and it's proven, I believe, in Florida by the two most liberal sheriffs in the state, and they're not even of the most populated areas. We have bigger metropolitan areas. The two most liberal sheriffs in the state have seized 95% of the guns since this went into effect. That should clearly say this is a political agenda and not a safety issue.
Well, you will not get much disagreement from me. Hey, before we go, do me a favor. Once again. I know our folks know you, but let's do it again anyway. When, where, how can they listen to Arms Room Radio?
Yep, go to armsroomradio.com. That's armsroomradio.com. You can see the list of everything there. If you want to listen live, you can go to armsroomradio.com, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. It's 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays. All our stuff goes up on SoundCloud and like a podcast, and you can listen to it then. We're in 25 markets around the country, so you can check our website and see if we happen to be where you are, so you can listen to us live on the old through the airwaves the way God meant it to be. And you can also get me over there at Arms Room Mike on the Twitter for now. I'm currently off the Facebook, so I've got some more time on my hands. Although my Twittering's gone up a bunch, quite coincidentally.
My mother used to say, if you play with your Twitter, you'll go blind.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Hey, Mike, thanks a lot for coming on. Everybody, that's Mike from Arms Room Radio. Yes, sir. Hey, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. We thank you guys so much for tuning in and being a part of our conversation. Please remember to like and share these videos. Tell your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Remember, got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.